Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Parentkind are a national charity representing parent views and voice and championing parental participation in education and school life. By fostering strong school-parent partnerships, we can boost student attendance, improve behaviour and enhance academic performance. When parents actively participate, students thrive. Join the movement that's reshaping education for the better. Visit parentkind.org to learn more about reaping the rewards of working in partnership with parents.
Are you ready to enhance your assessments in a world where AI is transforming education? Join Toddle for an exclusive event, Designing Assessments with AI, a live session tailored just for UK educators. Explore practical strategies to keep your assessments both effective and fair as AI continues to reshape education. Hear from experts Darren Coxon and Dale Bassett, who'll guide you through designing authentic assessments and navigating AI's biggest challenges. It's happening on December the 2nd from 4 to 6:30 p.m. Don't miss out on this opportunity to discover how you can adapt your assessment strategies for the future of education. Register for free at toddleapp.com/UKAI and secure your spot now.
Hey educators, ready to kickstart 2025 with world-class inspiration? Then don't miss Bet UK, happening January 22nd to 24th in London. Get fired up in our high-energy arena hosted by Laura McInerney with an incredible lineup. Hear from racing driver and inclusion advocate Nicholas Hamilton and the poetic power duo Michael Rosen and Christian Foley. Plus, don't miss the legendary Stephen Fry discuss the human approach to AI. Explore hundreds of hours of unmissable content, the latest edtech, and free CPD opportunities to supercharge your skills. All for free, so why wait? Head to betshow.com and book your ticket now. Let's make 2025 your best year yet.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Teachers Talk Radio, the Sunday Social with Toria Bono. This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, who are a leading publisher of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. If you are interested in a John Catt book, don't forget to visit the John Catt website at johncattbookshop.com and take advantage of our amazing discount code, which is JCTTR2425 for 20% off any book on the John Catt website. Our other partner this morning, is Parentkind. And if you haven't heard of Parentkind, if you work in a school and you're trying to think about ways that you can engage parents in a positive way, perhaps you are thinking about how you can best support teachers in difficult or challenging times with parent meetings or parent engagement or parental interactions, then check out Parentkind, because they've got a whole range of resources, and obviously their membership option is there as well for you to take advantage of too. They are at parentkind.org. That's their website. So if you want to find out more about Parentkind, you can visit them there and find out a bit more. I'm now going to hand over to Toria. Good morning.
Hey, how are you today, Tom?
I'm very well, thank you. And yourself?
Oh, so excited. It's Sunday Social, and today we are talking about the power of PE and why every child deserves a chance to fall in love with it. So I couldn't be more excited. Today, I'm joined by Matt Cotton. Now, Matt's a teacher and leader in a large junior school who is passionate about physical education and the benefits it provides for children. Truth be known, though, I know Matt quite well as I work alongside him. There are a couple of firsts today. One, I have never, ever had anyone on a show of mine that I work alongside, mainly because they know too much about me. So I'm slightly nervous about that, listeners. Secondly, although I've seen it from afar, I've never really chatted to Matt about his love of PE. I just know that he absolutely loves it, and I see the great work that he does. So this chat's going to be really enlightening for everyone. So joining Matt and I today, of course, is Tom Rogers, who is naturally there behind the scenes for those moments when everything live goes wrong. And of course, you, the listeners, if you're listening live and you want to join in the conversation, you have two ways of doing that: either text into the show or request to speak on Spaces. I'd love to know your thoughts about physical education and what you've done in your school to help children fall in love with it. So, on with the show. Thank you so much, Matt, for agreeing to come on. Now, I'm trusting you are going to preserve all my secrets. Is that right?
I promise not to say too much, Toria, of course. Hello, everyone. Hiya.
Thank you. And how are you doing on this gloriously wet Sunday?
Yeah, it's not the nicest of days, is it, to be honest? So actually being inside today talking to you isn't too bad to spend it, actually. So yeah, very well. How are you?
Yeah, good.
Good.
I'm so excited as I get to ask all the questions today that I've always wanted to ask you, which is really interesting. But I promise I'll be gentle. You know, the world's my oyster.
I'm
So
sure you will.
the first thing I want to know is actually, when did you fall in love with physical education?
Um, I think my journey with physical education, and when I refer to physical education, I refer to it as physical education being something much wider than just PE curriculum, which I'm sure we'll come on to. But I guess my initial love came from my schooling and my primary school days. I had two incredible teachers towards the end of my time at primary school. One is actually a head teacher locally now in a local primary school to us. And I think that inspired my love for sport, my love for the benefits that PE brings. And then I think as I grew up, I became really interested in team sports, and I played quite a lot of sport going through school. But interestingly, at university, I chose deliberately not to specialise in PE, and I actually specialised in maths and PE
Oh, I did
leadership.
not know that. Why?
Yeah, well, PE leadership was not something that at that stage, interestingly, really appealed to me, and
Mm,
I'm not really sure why. I think I preferred the idea of leading maths. That was something that at university really intrigued me. As soon as I,
mm,
however, got into school, I knew that PE was the direction I wanted to lead in terms of middle leadership and subject leadership. And then
mm.
from then, obviously, that love has grown, definitely. But yeah, interestingly, at university, it's not something I chose to specialise in.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, I'm going to be slightly controversial here. Do you think PE had I don't know, I don't want to say poorer sort of, a- it's not a poor opinion, but do you think people valued it less perhaps than subjects like maths, English, and so on?
Possibly. And I think there is a real divide with PE. You've got the real people that love it, and then this other extreme of people that, for some reason, and it's a shame that it is this way with this subject, but for some reason, people that are really anxious about it, and that then transpires into teachers, and teachers then not wanting to teach it, and there is a bit of a stigma around the subject. I also probably think that at a playing level, I never really played at an elite level or did anything that kind of really elite sport at school or then beyond that. So sport for me and PE for me was always about the social elements and the impact it had on me mentally. So that is also maybe something that has kind of shaped my journey along the way. I think definitely.
Mm. No, it's interesting because I mean, I did not have a good time with sport at all at school. And I do wonder if that impacted on my sort of love of teaching it as such, because you mentioned people that get anxious. PE is the one subject I get really anxious about because I think, oh God, what if I do it wrong? What if I do it wrong? Because PE for me at school was horrendous. And I'd be interested from listeners whether or not you loved PE at school and therefore you love teaching it, or whether actually PE was maybe you hated being taught PE at school, but you love teaching it. I don't know. I do wonder if my anxiety around teaching it comes from my anxiety at attending PE lessons at school.
And I think that's the case if you speak to a lot of people anecdotally, is that
Mm,
it stems from a bad experience of PE at school, and that I think is maybe a slightly now outdated style of PE teaching where it's we're all going to go outside, you're going to do this sport. Um, Males and females were split, and it was very
yeah.
do it or sit out, and that created a real negative stigma, I think, around PE, and that obviously sticks with children then into their adulthood, and it has a real damaging effect, not just on them when their children go to school, but also on them personally for the rest of their life, I think, in terms of whether they see exercise and physical activity as something that helps them and makes them feel good.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, and you know me, I sort of I rail against things, so I do the polar opposite. So I was absolutely determined that my daughter would love PE, and
Yeah,
to this day, she absolutely adores it. Studies PE at
absolutely.
college and plays football the whole time. But
Yeah.
it's just an interesting one. So, I mean, you said that you didn't do you studied maths or focused on maths at university, but when you then started teaching, was PE the subject that you wanted to lead?
Yeah, absolutely. And I immediately knew, without necessarily having that obviously fresh into my NQT year, without really realizing that PE would be the route I would go down, I immediately knew just from, I would say, my very first few PE lessons that this was the subject I feel I could have big influence over, that actually deep
Mm.
ingrained within me is that real passion for getting children active, and ultimately every child being able to find a sport or physical activity that they love. And I guess it's an area where I felt I can make the biggest difference, and I could see myself in that role, and kind of encouraging children to go down that route, definitely.
Now, a moment ago, you said that physical education is not just PE lessons. So, what is physical education in your opinion?
So I'll use the term PESPA, which is an acronym for PE, sport, and physical activity. So
Okay.
the goal, my vision, if you like, or the vision that we have at TAB, is for every child to have the opportunity to be active, to be motivated in sport and PESPA, um, and to have a lifelong love for PE, sport, and physical activity. So if you break down those three elements, the PE element is obviously what they'd get in curriculum physical education. You'd have then the sport element, which is maybe that competitive side of PESPA, and then you'll have physical activity. So even something as going for a walk, or children being physical when they're playing outside at break time. That for me encompasses is what PE really is. And obviously what we offer in curriculum PE at school sets a child then into an adult up for life in those areas.
So, it's actually a lot more than just a couple of PE lessons a week.
Yeah, and that's certainly how we see it as. And I think with a lot of initiatives and a lot of really good PE leads out there at the moment nationally, from what I see on Twitter and things like that, is that's definitely shaping the way that we see PE in education, and the fact that PE is not limited to 2 hours a week, obviously the compulsory 2 hours a week, but actually it's what we do before and after school. It's what we do at play times with the children. It's how many opportunities for fixtures can we give them throughout the week? What do we do at sports days? Do we do things in the week to encourage them? Like, do they have an extra session if they're training for a fixture, or can they have an extra session if they're struggling with their mental well-being, or do we use it as regulation? So there's so much more than what is necessarily seen on the surface. And like I said, there's a lot of great schools that are really changing the shape of PE or physical education in school at the moment. Definitely.
So it has. I mean, P's changed a great deal since I was at school, funnily enough, but also then since I started teaching, it's changed a great deal. And you mentioned mental well-being. I have to be honest and say that was never mentioned when I was given any CPD in the early days. I mean, how does that link together?
I think now there's an awful lot of research, and I can kind of guarantee, if you speak to anyone that does exercise regularly in any form, I'm not talking about kind of playing a well-known sport. I'm talking about someone that goes for a walk a couple of times a week. The evidence is incredibly clear of the hormones that are released when we take part in physical activity, and that feel good factor you get after physical activity. And then obviously you've got the side of it to do with team sports, or even in individual sports such as signing up to a running club, but you do that to get that social factor as well, which obviously really supports your mental well-being. It makes you feel good, you've got people around you to support you, and it builds up a great support network. And sport generally is fantastic for that, isn't it? You have those people around you with a common theme, a common interest. So the impact there is huge, and there's a lot of research that absolutely supports what I've just said, that it does have a massive impact on our mental well-being. But I think on the other hand, like you've said, and I know even I wasn't at school miles ago, but even kind of 15 years ago, something like that, when I was at high school, I could see that even then there was a huge stigma around PE. And for example, in the change rooms, negative things would be said, people would be picked on, and obviously that then sticks with people for their whole life. And I can think of a few individuals then that now probably have an awful relationship with sport and physical activity because of something really damaging that happened to them through their schooling. So I hope that they've now found something they enjoy in a sport or physical activity they do regularly that gives them that boost in their mental well-being. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think Paul's made a really great point, actually. He's just messaged in with the enthusiasm of a teacher towards a subject can often grab the children. And I found PE
Absolutely.
needs this more than most, especially for girls. And I think, I just remember my PE lessons at school, and it was a while ago, and I know that, people, but it was just so negative. Everything was negative. There was never a well done, you've attempted to run this. It was, you're not doing this well enough. And I was actually told eventually not to attend PE lessons, which didn't do much for
Yeah,
my
which
self-esteem.
no, and it's
It
shocking
was
to think that now, isn't it? And like you say, it wasn't
yes.
that long ago. I promise, Toria.
No, because
Um,
I went to a different school at the age of 14, and they were doing different sports, which I
yeah,
had never done. And they basically said to me, "Oh, don't worry about it, just sit out." And so from the age of 14 right the way up to 18, I did no sports in school and had this very, very poor opinion of myself in PE, which is why I always think this is why PE fascinates me, because has massively impacted on me as a teacher of PE and my confidence in teaching it. But as an adult now, I'm very keen on, movement and activity, and I think it's so vitally important. But I still have these absolute things. So I'm going to actually jump right on to teacher CPD. How do you change it?
yeah, absolutely. Before I get to that, I think as well,
Oh
it,
yeah.
it it shifted, I think, a little bit from a focus of PE always being for the elite person, and I think
Yes.
historically the people that have accessed great sports teaching and um, really been involved in those PE lessons are the people that they want in their teams, and the focus then would have been from the teacher on the individuals to be in their team, so that therefore the focus wouldn't be on the other children, and it leads to
Mm.
examples like you've just said where the opportunity isn't there for everyone because they're only interested in winning at a fixture at the next school event. Um, so yeah, absolutely, and it's incredibly damaging, and I think it's more severe than we'd see in any other subject, definitely.
I think you're right. I really do. Because I think that whole competitive thing really does come in. Or at least it did, but I think you're right. It's less so. Um, but yeah, teacher CBD, how do you get over, that sort of that hump as such that can occur there, which is like a barrier to teachers doing it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is something that we are certainly not yet there with as a school. And it's something that takes an incredible amount of time, effort, and energy to really
Mm.
shape the mindset of something that's so ingrained in so many adults and individuals and that anxiety. How do we overcome that anxiety? So I remember actually when I did one of my first CPD sessions at our school. Um, and I did a similar session with the lunchtime supervisors as well around play. And the look of and dread on people's faces, or the responses to the email you get where you say, "Oh, please wear something that you can be physical in or move around," and they go, you honestly get about 5 emails back, and they say, "Oh, we're not going to do too much, are we? Are you not going to make me run? Are you?" And that is exactly it. And we see that so much. So that's genuine anxiety of people that don't want to kind of partake. So
Mm.
in terms of how we overcome it, I think, like I said, it's a long game, definitely. And the way we've approached it at our school is we've kept it fun. We've kept it really light-hearted. We've listened to people that are concerned about certain sports, and we've listened to people's individual views around not wanting to partake in certain events. I think a lot of it is about getting them playing, and actually the best way to experience that feeling and emotion that the children are going to feel is by them doing it for themselves, them playing that game, or um, taking the opportunity to go for a walk with someone, and opening up those opportunities for them to experience the same
Mm.
emotions as the children. We see an awful lot of anxiety due to not knowing the rules of the game. So when children then playing the game, the teachers necessarily don't know how to, um, I don't know, umpire or referee a game, and that then causes them anxiety. So we've done again opportunities to play the sports and some sessions on understanding the rules of particular new games to help them be more confident in that. And once they've got that confidence and they see the impact it has, then it becomes a lot easier for them to stand up and feel confident teaching it. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. You're listening to the Sunday Social with Toria Bono on Teachers Talk Radio, and today we are talking about the power of PE. Our sponsors for the show are John Catt, um, and publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. And Parentkind. Parentkind are a national charity representing parent views and voice and championing parental participation in education and school life. By fostering strong school parent partnerships, we can boost student attendance, improve behaviour, and enhance academic performance. When parents actively participate, students thrive. Join the movement that's reshaping education for the better. Visit parentkind.org to learn more about reaping the rewards of working in partnership with parents. And yeah, I mean, Matt, you were saying about the having fun, and I've got to say, because we've started teaching, I want to say American football, but it's not American football. What's the official name for it?
Yeah, so it's a kind of subdivision of American football, which is what we call NFL flag football.
That's it.
So it's like a
NFL
tag
flag.
version.
And in the last PCPD, we went out. I was in the group that went out to play that, and we went out and we were absolutely terrified, like
Yeah,
seriously just terrified. It was so helpful because actually by the end of it, we were having great fun. We really were. But I think you're right. It's the rules. It's remembering all the rules. It's remembering what has to happen when, how you guide the children. And actually, one of the best things to do is play it. And and we are quite a competitive lot, so it did get slightly competitive, but it was great fun. It really was. And I think sit going out there and joining in that way rather than just learning sort of, I think I'd struggle if someone just brought up a PowerPoint and said this is it and this is what you need to do. I don't think I'd find it as easy to understand.
yeah, and I guess in the same way, it would be almost like trying to teach a PE lesson in the same way we'd to teach a traditional lesson, in terms of there's 30 children in a classroom, we're going to flick through these slides and talk about it, rather than actually them doing it and acting on it.
Mm.
So but there again, there's certain sports that I think within the PE curriculum that do cause more anxiety, and I mean, you could look really deeply into it and look at the impact the media has, on a sport like football, for example,
Yes.
and the stigmas around football and the relationship a lot of people have with the sport. And I find it's very marmite. It's either they love it and adore it, and that for then transpires into their lessons, or they absolutely cannot stand it, and that makes then someone really nervous about going to teach a lesson in football, particularly when you've got some of the older children that think they are God's gift to the game, and know absolutely everything about the sport. And that can be quite intimidating, I think, for a teacher that's not necessarily know the game, or has taught it previously.
What
Um,
I find fascinating about those older children, and I would suggest the older male children, is they
yeah,
are convinced that I know limited amounts about football, which is fascinating because actually I know a great deal about football. But it's really interesting if ever I'm sort of refereeing a game of football or whatever, which I have done, and they sort of they assume I don't know. And but it's interesting the way those gendered things come
yeah, of
up. And I
course.
wonder, I wonder about your opinion on that gender thing. And what you said actually previously was, historically, you used to have boys' PE, girls' PE,
Yeah.
boys' sport, girls' sport, and so on. I mean, how do we approach it nowadays? So actually, we're trying to get over those sort of gender boundaries.
Yeah, and I think even when I was at school as well, I think the boys went off and did PE, and the girls might have gone and done gymnastics or dance,
Yeah.
and that then obviously sticks with people for generations, and it feeds through into their children and so on as well. So we're still definitely experiencing the impact of those kind of things, and obviously there's great government initiatives and movements now in terms of equal opportunity and access for all, no matter gender or any other um, reason. I think it's really hard to break down because children,
Mm,
particularly with sport, come with these preconceived stereotypes and ideas around who is sport for and who should play this particular sport. And again, it goes back to opportunity, which is something we keep banging on about at our school, is making sure every child has the opportunity to play every sport and find the one that they love.
mm.
And I think that, for me, is the real key to the success of a child then becoming an adult who enjoys physical activity and sees the huge benefit of it. Absolutely. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Now, I want to jump slightly because Paul's put something on the chat that I think would be a really interesting discussion point. He's put in the PE premium has helped PE as schools need to justify the 16,000 a year that they get. If they use it properly, then teachers get the CPD they need. So I wonder about that sports premium, and I wonder how best does a PE lead like you approach it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Paul's spot on. Is the best way we can empower children is through effective teaching ultimately, and the best way we
Mm,
can make effective teachers is obviously through brilliant CPD, and therefore I think that has to be a priority at every single school with the sports premium, is providing teachers enough resources and effective planning, but also effective methods for teaching that enable them to teach great PE lessons. I think it has to be personal to the school, and I know we've had huge conversations both within our department as well, excuse me, but also with other schools locally on how we can effectively use this effective, basically a pot of money to provide the best opportunities for our children. So one of the ways we do it is, basically we fund a lot of our clubs. We provide
right.
opportunity for children to get involved in physical activity. So we have lots of after school clubs. We spend a good proportion of our budget as well on running what we call engagement opportunities. So chances for children to, outside of their core curriculum PE, to get physically active. So that might be, we get a local basketball team to come in and run a day session with a group of our children. It might be that we use a bit of the money to take another couple of teams to a fixture to give them that further opportunity. It might be, we've just recently trialed this, but we've run a morning club where we invite parents and their children in. We call it a community club. And that had a huge impact on parents seeing their children active and children seeing their parents active. And again, it's another opportunity for children to become physically active. So that's the way I see it. And it does need to have a legacy. That's really important. It needs to have a lasting impact. And the best lasting impact, obviously, we can offer our children is that they find a sport they love. They have the opportunity to find a sport or a game that they really love, and that will then stick with them for the rest of their life. There's countless ways I think it can be spent, but for me, definitely the CPD offer needs to be really, really considered within that spending budget, and also really consider what are we doing to give children the opportunity to become physically active beyond what we are currently offering without that pot of money. Um, but it can be difficult, and I think if you're not necessarily experienced or well versed or talk to the right people about it, I've seen some quite shocking examples in a lot of schools where unfortunately that money is squirreled away before the PE lead even has chance to consult with the head teacher,
Wow.
and that money is not necessarily spent where it should be. So I mean, I'm incredibly fortunate. We're incredibly fortunate at our school that it's spent in the right way, and obviously I have ownership of that. but the impact of it when budgets are so tight in schools, I think, and that pot of money is there, it's not always spent exactly as it should be, I think.
Mm. Yeah, and as you say, budgets are so tight, and so therefore people are like, "Oh, here's an extra pot of money. Why don't we do this with it?" But actually, if it's spent correctly, effectively, it's getting more children to be active, as you say. Now, you've mentioned clubs, but I don't think, I mean, we, when I say large junior school, we are a sixth form intake, so we've got about 800 children. I've lost track of how many clubs we've now got. So how many clubs are there currently going?
So at the moment, we are incredibly lucky because we've got a or generally very supportive staff network in terms of running the club. So we've got, I think it's the moment is 25 sports clubs we run a week, and obviously that's just sporting clubs. Beyond that, we'd run other clubs as well, and I think at the moment there's about 500 of our 750 children that have signed up. So, um,
500.
yeah, so it's a lot of
That's
children that attend
mad.
a sporting club or a fixture in many ways.
Yeah.
So some of those are external clubs. So some of them we use a pot of that sports premium or a portion of that sports premium funding to pay for maybe a local basketball or a local football club to come in
Mm,
and then run that session, which obviously alleviates some of the pressure on staff. And then others clubs are basically goodwill of staff, and that brings us up to that number of 25, which is an awful lot of sport. I mean, if you walk around our school before, during or after school, you will see sport happening all the time, which I absolutely love as PE. Obviously, it gives me that real
mm,
buzz to see that I know for a fact that every hour of the day in our school there is either a PE lesson going on or there's a club going on. Um, we also, I think, where we are, Toria, we're very lucky with the facilities that we've got.
mm.
So we have a dedicated PE sports hall, if you like. We also have an absolutely enormous field, which does make it easier for us to provide those
Yeah.
opportunities, because I know a lot of schools are working around kind of lunch times in the hall and then getting children out of the hall because we've got to get a PE lesson in there in half an hour. And we don't have that barrier. We have literally, due to the size of our school, from 9 o'clock in the morning till 3, there is a PE lesson going on in that sports hall, to guarantee those children are getting a absolute minimum 2 hours of taught PE as well.
Mm,
And I think
absolutely.
another thing we've done as well, which is a little tip for some of the PE leads out there, but following COVID, we made that shift for children to come in sports kit. And I know a lot of schools are kind of doing that now, but before that, obviously they were changing, which meant the children really were realistically getting 2 40-minute lessons rather than the full 2 hours as well. So that's definitely had a bit of an impact on making sure we're absolutely maximising the 2 hours they've got in their PE lessons, definitely.
It's interesting because when I started working at Tab, you know, I was struck even then by how much sport was important to the school. I hadn't worked somewhere where PE was as important, and as I say, taking on board what I've said about my PE history, you know, I was a bit like, oh my goodness, you know, they're very into their PE here. Um, but I wonder, how did you take that even further?
I think it's a really good question, to be honest. And interestingly for me, obviously, it's my first school, so I've been on
Mm,
placements in other schools, but I've seen I've seen that comparison. I think it'd be interesting when I eventually move on to another school to kind of. I think that at that point I realised just how lucky I was at Tab, not only with what I inherited, but also the staff and the goodwill of the staff. And I think
mm,
once P becomes kind of part of the school, if you like, and becomes that USP almost of a school, that legacy is there. And I think PE at Tab will always be seen as a real strength of the school, I hope anyway. So it was a difficult job, I think, in inheriting the role in some ways, and in other ways, obviously, it was a lot easier because the subject was in a good position when I took it over. I think in terms of how I took it on, and developed it, my passion around the PE curriculum was always about opportunity. And it was, I think, stemming from my kind of upbringing, not necessarily being at an elite level. I did maybe feel that I didn't always get the opportunities that those higher level performers would.
yeah.
Um, So I think if I said what have I brought to the subject at our school, it's definitely that. I think it's the chance for every single child, if they are willing to and want to be able to take part and attend a fixture, or um, take part in an engagement day, or get to go to this basketball club with the professional basketballer that comes in. So I think that's one way I've took it forward. I think in in another sense, I have a real passion for swimming. And obviously, we can talk about swimming in more detail, because I think it's a bone of contention in a lot of schools. But we obviously are a coastal school. We live right by the beach, and I think when I first started the PE role, we had about 50% of our children were meeting national curriculum at the end of Key Stage 2, which for me was terrifying. Um,
Yeah.
because basically we were sending half our children out into the big wide world, leaving us, and they couldn't swim, which was scary for me, considering most of them maybe walk down the beach at the weekend, and they live
Mm.
right by the sea. So we've worked really hard on that, on increasing the frequency that children are swimming, and making sure that they have opportunities to swim. Obviously, the cost of it is a real big factor, but things like giving out free pool vouchers or doing fun days at a local swimming pool, um, to increase that number. We're now at about 72%, which is a lot better.
Mm.
And we've shifted that focus now to water safety. So as long as a child can be water safe, ultimately, then the swimming can come after that. But let's first of all make sure they can tread water, they can be safe in a pool, they can perform safe self-rescue. So that for us is a real big priority we're working towards at the moment. Definitely. The other thing I think, to tell me please to stop if you want to
No, no, no.
unpick
You
anything
crack
further.
on.
But
I've got a ton of things to ask you in a moment, but you carry on.
okay.
I'm just you're listening.
The other thing I think that we've really worked on since I've taken over, is our play offer, and it goes back to
Right. Yeah.
opportunity. So I think if the children are outside and they've got those chances to become active with different equipment, with different games that we've set up, and the midday meal teachers supervising, but also encouraging and getting involved with the children, so the children are seeing them really enjoying their playtime and passionately taking part in physical activity, then again that is huge, and it encourages children to maybe then, I did this game with my teacher at lunchtime today, mum, dad, whoever's at home, do you want to come and join in with me and play along? So again, I think that's kind of the third area where I've tried to make that shift and take what we offer at our school one step further. Because I did inherit it in a good place, but there's always room for improvement, and we've still got loads of things that we're working on at the moment to try and make even better than we're already doing. Definitely.
But what's interesting is that, in a sense, you're saying that those PE lessons, that because if we go back to what you were saying about physical education at the very beginning, the fact there are three parts to it, really, the fact that the PE lessons as such were in a strong place, but you're talking about the development beyond that. And I think
Absolutely, yeah.
that playtime's a really interesting one, because playtime historically was always fight time. Children would come in at the end of playtime and you'd be sorting out 3 million different fights because they'd all been arguing or whatever. And I mean, I would love to know from listeners what you do at playtime, because I think children it children, I don't know, I think they benefit from having a more structured playtime, but at the same time, I know that there's that there are some people that believe that they should be unstructured so they can just play. I mean, it's a really tricky one, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I think it's something that needs to be considered really carefully. Um, so when I first took on the PE leadership, this was kind of a couple of years into my subject leadership at our school. The play was highly unstructured. And that we did have a lot of issues with behaviour. There was a lot of fighting, there was a lot of
Mm.
arguing, children were coming in upset, and the teachers that were out there supervising kind of couldn't really manage it. So we made the decision to shift towards a play based break time. We invested quite a lot in equipment, and for example, put down new playground markings. We installed some goals for the children to play football. We got the netball hoops out. We got an active trail put around the outside. I think if I was reflecting now, maybe we went too quick, and we went from kind of
Okay.
0 to 100 with nothing out there to then there being all this play equipment. And that's something I think schools need to, and leaders need to consider really carefully, is going from 0 to 100 can kind of, the children don't necessarily know what to do or how to interact with this equipment, and
Yeah.
it
Okay.
can look really wild out there, and ours did initially, to be perfectly honest with you. And I think if it's done gradually and it's considered, how you can make plays more active and more engaging for the children, then we're now in a position where it is now really effective, and we do have fewer issues on the playground. We do have happier children, and I think every single pupil voice I've done, the children rave about their playtimes, and they say we love our playtimes, we get the equipment, our teachers join in with us, and it's had a huge positive impact. And children come in smiling, they're happy, they've been physically active, and they've had that opportunity, they've had that chance to enjoy being physically active with their friends. That if you think kind of like early years education, that is the bedrock for physical education, and being having good mental well-being as a result of being physically active, I think, definitely.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It is. It goes back to that, and it's really lovely seeing them playing together, and being active with one another. There's a game that they play. Oh, I forgot the name of it now. There's
Foursquare.
a That's
Yep.
it.
How
And
did
they
I guess?
absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
they love that game.
Yeah.
And it's so wonderful watching them collaborate on it. And you they aren't arguing, they aren't fighting, they're just joining in and having so much fun playing it. And they're desperate to play Foursquare.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's little things like that that we've now dripped in and added. And again, it all needs to be taught. I think it needs to be taught. It needs to be explained to the children at every single stage. We're now
Mm.
adding this. This is how you play this game. Um, and then we train up the midday meals teachers. Then we put the playground markings down. And we're now at a point where we've got referees outside that run the football element, and we've got play leaders that are there to encourage children with, I don't know, parachute games, or this is how you play Foursquare, or come and have a look with me. Do you want me to teach you this game? So our pupil leadership has then fed into that, and that's become a really big part of our play offer as well.
We'll come back to people leadership, but I'm just wondering if you were to give advice to someone else who wanted to change their play times, what would be the step process?
I think first of all, it's consider your space. Absolutely, consider
Okay.
what space you have. And I've obviously, there's schools that have tiny little courtyard playgrounds, and then certain things aren't possible. And there's schools that have massive playgrounds, and also that needs to be considered as well, because I think too much space can also cause children to maybe be a bit more isolated than they usually would. So I think consider that. I would absolutely recommend anyone to go and look at a school in your local area that has kind of got play and is what is there's something they're working on. So we've had a few people come to us, and that's been great for them, but it's also been brilliant for us because we've reflected on maybe what we could do better, and they've given us ideas, and we've shared our practice with them. Absolutely. So it's visit other schools, definitely. Consider the space you've got. Consider your children, definitely. Obviously, we're a junior school, so we've got those slightly older children. But I've seen it done so brilliantly in infant schools and all through primaries, where the play author is kind of small world play, and certain schools use something called Opal, which is a scheme, an outdoor play and learning, and that that is picked up in quite a lot of schools as well. So there's lots to consider, and I think just talk to people, share your ideas, go and look at other schools, look at what your children need. Does it need to be more social for them? Does it need to be more physical? And then adjust what you're going to offer and what equipment you get accordingly. Definitely.
Is that the same? Sorry, I'm jumping slightly here, but is that the same for curriculum?
I think so, definitely. And what we've changed with our curriculum has been based on what the children have said, in all honesty.
Okay.
Um, and again, you need to consider your facilities, and that absolutely impacts on how you structure your curriculum, for certain. So yeah, absolutely, the link between the two in that sense is quite clear, I think. And you have to be realistic with what you can offer. If you don't have any indoor space for PE, then that really does impact your curriculum, and you need to think about, it's still absolutely doable, manageable, but then how do you plan your curriculum to make sure you can offer those 2 hours, and what sports you need to consider? And I've seen some incredible PE lessons taught, and one of the best PE lessons I've seen taught was in a classroom, and they did a table tennis session, and they set up nets on a table. They spread out the children. It
Wow.
was quite a big classroom, and they basically did a little table tennis session. It was absolutely brilliant, and that was with a few bats and just normal classroom tables, and then a few nets that they'd got kind of clipped on the side. And that was in a tiny little school. That I visited on a placement. They didn't have any indoor space really. It was raining outside, absolutely horrible weather, and they made a brilliant PE lesson from it. So yeah, it does impact you absolutely. The weather impacts us hugely, obviously, because as much as we try and get the children outside, that can be a real challenge, especially with weather like today. So yeah, all those things need to be considered, I think, when you're kind of developing PE and the curriculum and the play offer that you offer at your school. Absolutely.
You're listening to the Sunday Social with Toria, Bono on Teachers Talk Radio, and today we are talking about the power of PE. This show is brought to you in partnership with John Cat Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit johncatbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Parent Kind are a national charity representing parent views and voice and championing parental participation in education and school life. By fostering strong school parent partnerships, we can boost school attendance, improve behaviour, and enhance academic performance. When parents actively participate, students thrive. Join the movement that's reshaping education for the better. Visit parentkind.org to learn more about reaping the rewards of working in partnership with parents. Now, Matt, you mentioned pupil leadership because you mentioned about the referees, etc., at playtime. So, where does pupil leadership fall in the whole PE sort of thing?
I think, to be honest with you, pupil leadership is something we've only really grasped recently.
Okay.
And I think the danger is it can be quite tokenistic, and you can do something on a surface level that actually doesn't have much impact either for the leaders or the children that are being led, if you like.
Hmm.
So for me, I see people leadership as almost the cherry on the cake, the icing on the cake, and it's that final layer for us of really knowing that we are mastering PE, and it's then therefore something that is embedded within our school. Um, it takes an awful lot of training and time, from either the teacher or the subject lead that is running that training for the children. So we are lucky enough to have 3 opportunities for pupil leadership within PE at our school. So the first of those is the sports leadership, and our sports leaders are trained by our specialist PE teacher, wonderful teacher called Katie at our school. She's absolutely phenomenal. So they go with her once a week on a Thursday morning. They come in before school. They have training about how to support in a PE lesson. What does a good warm up look like? Or how do we teach this element? How do we teach shooting in football? What activities could we do? And that training then accumulates into children becoming very proficient, in all honesty, at helping support and lead a PE lesson. And it's not saying they teach a lesson at all. They're still out there with the teacher, but they give advice, they know the rules, they can maybe help with the warm up. And that's something that we've had to develop that program over certainly since I've taken over, but before that as well. So I would kind of say in the last 8 years, and we've now got to a point we're happy with it. But that is meeting the
Hmm.
children every week. So that's again something that has to be factored in, because we're all short on time, and not every subject leader is going to be able to do that. So as well as that, we have our play leaders, which is run by another lady at our school, and again, absolutely brilliant, has an extensive knowledge of play. And what Kelly does is she takes them again in a lunchtime, and she's built up them a bank of knowledge and understanding around different play ideas. They have a say in the equipment we purchase. they have an impact over. They come out and we do our training with other members of staff, and they give their tips and ideas as well. And again, they've had that training weekly to be able to support them to support others, basically. And again, only now I think are we seeing the impact of that. We've done that for the last 3 years, and each year we haven't got it quite right. So we've adapted, we've changed it, and it's with these people leadership roles. I think it's making a role that the children are going to sustain, and that's what's really crucial. It's making sure they enjoy that role. They don't just do it for a week and then go, "I'm not going to turn up anymore." But they see their purpose within that role, and once they found that purpose, they have the enjoyment in fulfilling their people leadership opportunity. Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think our hardest one is the referees, like you mentioned, Toria. But
Yeah.
I mean, you only got to flick on the TV and look at any football game at any point over the weekend, and that is what our children are being exposed to, unfortunately. And it's an awful shame, I think, because in no other sport do referees kind of receive that level of scrutiny and abuse, actually. And obviously, it's the most popular sport at our school, as it is with most schools in the UK, and that then transpires into the children. So we've got an incredible group of 20 children who are our school referees, and they work with me very closely, and we've done an awful lot of training on different scenarios. And again, they meet with me weekly, and they're out there, bless them, every break and lunchtime refereeing the football games. And they do naturally, unfortunately, sometimes get a hard time, but in a way, I think for the children playing, having one of their peers as the referee, someone they really respect, and I think the children have to be very well chosen. They do need to have a certain level of resilience. But having their peer as a referee rather than an adult, they are certainly more respectful, I think, towards that peer. Particularly if it's someone they know that plays the game and understands the rules really clearly. And we are now starting to see benefits, and we are definitely having fewer issues with football at break and lunchtime, which I think is like I said earlier, is a real challenge across many schools, particularly with regards to football at those unstructured times, because children really struggle to play it fairly and to play it responsibly, I think, due to what they see, due to what they experience at home, but also on the media as well, and conversations with parents and that kind of thing. I don't know, you're probably not you experience those challenges yourself with your daughter too, I'm sure.
Yeah, I just find it fascinating. I mean, I do find it really interesting watching the children playing football outside, and and yeah, and I've watched a great deal of football, but it is fascinating watching them and watching the fact that they are just so they believe so strongly that they are right, even when they are wrong, and they will argue black is white out there, which is fascinating. But actually, the referees are doing a good job. But I've never seen children. I don't know, but it's the passion that they have behind, well, their volition that they are right, and they won't be told any other way. And I also find it really interesting that there tends to be, and I don't know whether this is every sport, but there tends to be a bit of a hierarchy thing with the football, where some children are put on a pedestal out there because, oh, they are so good at football, and we need to listen to everything that they say. Um, and I find it fascinating watching them playing football at playtime. I really do.
Yeah, and in all
Mm.
honesty, for a sport that I played my whole life growing up, it's the sport I least like teaching in PE. Absolutely, because and unfortunately it is kind of the older males, but boys at our school,
Mm,
that have this kind of stigma around the sport and think that unfortunately they are God's gift to the game, and that
mm,
creates huge problems for teachers. And there's a lot of reason. That's a lot of the reason, I think, why so many teachers absolutely despise teaching PE. And I'm obviously PE lead, and it's the game that I absolutely love. But if you ask me to teach it and kind of teach a PE lesson, I wouldn't choose to teach football. First off, absolutely not. Because it is such a challenge, and you feel so sorry for those children that really want to kind of give it a go and try, but are massively overpowered and overrun
mm.
by those children that think they're the best at it, basically. Yeah, it's a real challenge, and I think anecdotally, when we've done pupil voices, the only time a child has ever said, "Oh, I don't really enjoy a lesson," is due to it being a football lesson, and them then saying that, "Oh, these two boys take over, or this child takes over, and then no one gets the ball. We can't have it." So it's the hardest sport to teach, absolutely, because they all pick up on what they see online or on the media, or after having conversations with certain parents, and think that they can act in that same way as well. So it is a shame. It's an absolutely brilliant game, that so many children love, and more children would love, I think, if those barriers were broken down.
Well, I think it was fascinating. I mean, I was couple of months ago, it must have been, there was a female commentator commentating on male football. And the controversy that erupted on Twitter was immense about, the fact that she was permitted to commentate on female football, but she wasn't permitted to commentate on male football because she doesn't know anything, and I couldn't quite believe some of the things that were being said about the fact that actually females should not be commentating on male football. Um, and what I find interesting about my daughter is that she's now 18 and she studies football at college. And I would say now, at the age of 18, there is no longer, I would say, um, a gender divide. Yes, the males play the men's football, females play the women's football, but actually they play together and they have deep respect for one another as decent footballers as such. But I just think the whole thing around football is really interesting,
Yeah,
and more so, in a sense, gendered than in any other sport that I know.
yeah, I completely agree. And what the FA are doing, and the Lionesses, and the success they've had, has been absolutely huge. And
Mm,
I think we're still in many ways a long way off. Absolutely, and I think there is still a big divide, sadly.
yeah.
Um, it and But I think it absolutely is something that needs to be unpicked and spoken about with the children and broken down, because we still see it. The children come to us, and the boys say, "Oh, we're doing gymnastics. Why are we doing gymnastics?" And the girls will then, stereotypically here, but a number of the girls will say, "Oh, we're not going to do football. We're not going to join in
Mm,
this lesson." So there's still so much work that needs to be done about breaking down those gender divides in sport, and that obviously starts with us, but it needs to come top down as well. It needs to be from those professionals, and there's a lot of great people doing brilliant things, but then we see instances like you've just said, where a female commentator is slated
mm.
for reporting on a male game, which is horrific, isn't it? And it needs to start at the top as well as the bottom, I think, definitely.
And I think it's interesting that when you turn on TV, historically, it was mainly male games that were there, and actually now finally we're seeing more females. We're seeing female football, we're seeing female rugby, we're seeing female golf, and so on. I think there's a great deal more being shown on television that historically wasn't shown. It tended to be very much a male sport, was male dominated if you ever turned on a TV.
Yeah, and that's only really, isn't it, until very recent years, to be honest with you, that we've
Mm,
started to see that change. And it's a good change, absolutely, of course it is, and it's heading in the right direction. I just hope it's fast enough, if that makes sense, and that
yes.
that we kind of catch up quicker, because it absolutely needs to. We do still, if I was going to pick a demographic to be disengaged at our school, it would kind of be the older females,
Mm,
particularly our year 5 and 6 girls that are disengaged with physical activity. Um, I think it's better now than it has been in previous years,
hmm.
and I hope that's the case amongst many schools as well. So again, that needs to be reflected in what you do. So when we seek opportunities, we will always seek opportunities for those demographics of children in school that we think are disengaged. Um, and again, that can be difficult, because obviously you're trying to get someone involved that doesn't want to be. But I do absolutely truly believe there is a sport or physical activity for everyone, and it's just a matter of finding it and working with that child or that family until it has been found. and we're getting there, but it's a real challenge. And like I say, I think it's a much bigger problem than necessarily we can solve at our level, but we can absolutely be that start and be the one to make the change in the initial stages, of course.
Yeah. Now, I want to go back to swimming because you said that swimming can be a bone of contention. Why?
Because I think, first of all, it's expensive, and unless you
Okay.
have a pool in your school, even if you do have a pool in your school, it's incredibly expensive to maintain, obviously. Um, but it can be a real challenge, I think, for schools to provide really good, high quality swimming lessons to ensure that as many children as possible can meet the curriculum and ultimately become safe in the water. Because for me, that's my goal. That's what I want children to achieve. And I know where we are, this might be different in other kind of areas of the country,
Hmm.
but where we are, in West Sussex, it's a real challenge. We don't have that many pools. Um, we are quite spread out in terms of access to the swimming pool. So a lot of schools then have to put on coaches, rather than walk or find another mode of transport. And then obviously it does cost when you're there. But obviously that's not just our issue. That's the issue for parents as well. And parents absolutely, I think, do recognise the importance of it, but it's really expensive.
Yeah.
I think even just to take a child just for a bit of free swim in a pool, for an hour, or whatever, it adds up and it becomes expensive, and that's without lessons. And if you start looking at lessons, again, it's really costly. So I think that's why it's the bone of contention. It's difficult for schools to get it right, I think, and a lot of conversations I have around swimming are people frustrated at not being able to offer the children what they want. Um, and the only way you can really do that, in all honesty, is by having a pool on your site. And obviously, that's not something primary schools can afford, or secondary schools can afford. To be honest with you, so for me, primary swimming is a real challenge. We are very lucky. We use, due to the size of our school, throughout the year, we use 3 different swimming pools, basically. So we use a Lido in the summer, we use the local leisure centre pool, and then we actually borrow often, which is very kind of them, but we borrow off an independent school and get free use of their pool.
Mm.
But we spend an awful lot of our main school budget, obviously, on the curriculum PE, and then curriculum swimming, sorry, and then we run a top-up program which is paid for by us out of sports premium funding, and it's thousands of pounds we spend, thousands of pounds. I think it's kind of north of £10,000 we spend a year on just giving our children the opportunity to swim, um, which is
Wow.
astronomical, and we have to find that budget. And this is what I mean. So if leaders don't give PE leads the opportunity to spend some of that sports premium on their top-up swimming,
Mm.
then it's a real challenge to see another way how you could provide that. Because parents, that it's something else to ask parents for. If we then say, oh, as well as all the other trips we're doing and things like that, oh, and now you've got to pay this much to send your child to top up swimming, parents aren't going to pay it, and therefore then that is a barrier to that child having that opportunity to be able to swim, which doesn't sit well with me, particularly where we live. Um, but these days, children, I don't think, have swimming lessons. It's not something that I think, is accessible to all anymore, which is why it's such a
It's
challenge.
not. I remember when I took I took Claudia for her original swimming lessons, and they're expensive. They really are expensive, and I think it is a barrier to people, just doing swimming. And I also wonder how much people value swimming, how much people assume that actually people, this sounds mad, but that actually we can just naturally, innately swim because we're human beings. I do wonder if people think that
Yeah,
actually they don't need to learn because they'll just know.
yeah, absolutely. But for me, it's a skill. Obviously it's a
Mm,
sport in its competitive sense as well, but it's a life skill. I
mm,
feel I'm particularly passionate for schools and areas that are right on the coast as well, because we'd encourage the children to go and play in the water, but if they can't swim, that then becomes really dangerous as well.
mm.
And it was something that was ingrained into me as a child: learn how to swim, and I was fortunate enough to have lessons. Um,
Yeah.
I think that's part of the reason I'm so passionate about it as well. And I want every child to be able to have access to those lessons. So it's something we prioritise as a school, and I think definitely in those areas that are close to the sea, it should be something that is also prioritised as well.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Parentkind are a national charity representing parent views and voice and championing parental participation in education and school life. By fostering strong school-parent partnerships, we can boost student attendance, improve behaviour and enhance academic performance. When parents actively participate, students thrive. Join the movement that's reshaping education for the better. Visit parentkind.org to learn more about reaping the rewards of working in partnership with parents.
Are you ready to enhance your assessments in a world where AI is transforming education? Join Toddle for an exclusive event, Designing Assessments with AI, a live session tailored just for UK educators. Explore practical strategies to keep your assessments both effective and fair as AI continues to reshape education. Hear from experts Darren Coxon and Dale Bassett, who'll guide you through designing authentic assessments and navigating AI's biggest challenges. It's happening on December the 2nd from 4 to 6:30 p.m. Don't miss out on this opportunity to discover how you can adapt your assessment strategies for the future of education. Register for free at toddleapp.com/UKAI and secure your spot now.
Hey educators, ready to kickstart 2025 with world-class inspiration? Then don't miss Bet UK, happening January 22nd to 24th in London. Get fired up in our high-energy arena hosted by Laura McInerney with an incredible lineup. Hear from racing driver and inclusion advocate Nicholas Hamilton and the poetic power duo Michael Rosen and Christian Foley. Plus, don't miss the legendary Stephen Fry discuss the human approach to AI. Explore hundreds of hours of unmissable content, the latest edtech, and free CPD opportunities to supercharge your skills. All for free. So why wait? Head to betshow.com and book your ticket now. Let's make 2025 your best year yet.
I think so. I mean, as you say, we are so close to the sea, and children think nothing of going down to the beach and so on, but actually they need to know how to swim to be safe. I think
Yeah,
that's so key. And I was just thinking, actually, Claudia's got some friends that are unable to swim at the age of sort of 18, 17, 18. And that to me is not I don't know. I don't know if it the culture has changed. I don't know if people prioritize it less than they used to. But I was really surprised that all her friends, not all her friends were able to swim.
yeah, absolutely. And I think it was shocking. Like I say, I think we're about kind of 50% 8 years ago, something like that, for children
Mm.
that were leaving us being able to swim to national curriculum level. And the national curriculum is ambitious, but I think it's ambitious in a good sense. Um, so yeah, it's something that we will continue to focus on, definitely, and I think it needs to always remain a priority for us, considering where we are and considering the huge number of our children that still cannot swim competently. Absolutely.
I've got a weird question that you may or may not know the answer to. So it's on the national curriculum for primary. Is it on the national curriculum for secondary?
No, I think it's off at secondary, isn't it? So
Oh,
it's literally key stage 2, I
so
think.
if they haven't learnt by key stage 2,
Yeah,
there's
that's it.
no. Oh my goodness, I hadn't realised that. So actually, there's no necessity for them to learn in secondary. So basically, if they haven't learned by the end of year 6, that's it. They don't have to learn in secondary, so they're not going to. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness, that's shocking.
yeah. So that this kind of our one chance to get it right.
Oh,
Um, yeah, and obviously then it's not tracked or monitored, which is scary, isn't it? It's scary that kind of we're it. You've got a 4-year window to get it right, basically, and to get it ticked off
I
the list.
think I just assumed that it went on into secondary.
No, I'm
I
just
I
looking
don't
now,
think
and
I'd
it's
ever thought about it very consciously.
no, yeah, that's it. And obviously
Wow.
at secondary you'll have a few people that maybe choose to take it further and focus on it for kind of
Mm.
higher level sport, and they might focus in at college, but that's at the elite level, and that's then not a problem, is it? But for us, it's how many children are stopping at the end of key stage 2, not being able to swim, and will never then swim again for the rest of their life. And again, it's a linchpin, isn't it? Because we've got to be the one in 8 lessons that we give our children to get them to enjoy it. And for me, that's a bigger battle. Get them to be good at it will come later if they enjoy it. Um, and often children don't, because it's terrifying. You've got kind of 30 children. If you've never been in the water before, it's hard for us kind of people that do swim to grasp the concept. But
Mm.
ultimately, we're saying jump in that water. They're not sure if they can touch the bottom. Obviously they can, but they're not sure initially. Not sure if they can touch the bottom. It's a terrifying thought. And I've had so many children that I've taught and gone swimming with that I've actually got in the water with them. And because we have external teachers, but I've just literally walked them up and down, just get them used to being in the water. Or even for children I've seen, just to put their face in the water is terrifying. And children don't do it. If they shower at home or whatever, they're not exposed to dunking their head in the water and coming back up. So
Yeah.
8 lessons isn't enough, and therefore we've got to get them to enjoy it first of all within those 8 lessons, so that they say at the weekend, "Oh, mum, dad, whoever's looking after them, can we go swimming? Can we? I really enjoy swimming in school. Can I go swimming?" And then it's less of a problem, and that they will catch up. But yeah, there's a lot of barriers to it, and I'm particularly passionate about that area, and it's something that does get forgotten, I think, in primary school. And it's kind of one of those things that's just done and just happens. Oh, you've got your 8. It's like a trip. You've got your 8 swimming lessons, get them done. Oh, we've ticked that off the list. We've given every child swimming lessons, but actually it's much more than that, and it's a life skill that's so important, I think.
I don't think I've ever thought about it consciously before this
Yeah,
very moment, actually. I don't think I've ever sort of put 2 and 2 together and gone, oh, yeah, because as a parent, to me, it was just a logical step because I'm a swimmer. So
yeah, exactly.
I hadn't naturally thought anything different. And it's like, yeah, that whole thing about just children being terrified of putting their face in the water or never having been in the water before year
Yeah,
5. Yeah, that's, oh, goodness.
yeah.
Yeah, I can, and I'd be interested, listeners, to hear what you do at your schools, whether it's something, how you approach that whole swimming. Um, Jumping slightly to another life skill, which is cycling. Because
Yeah,
actually nowadays, we're really trying to push people to sort of cycle more than go, than go in cars or whatever else.
yeah.
And I mean, is that part of the whole PE remit thing?
Yeah, and for us, absolutely, it is at the moment, and we're very lucky. We've got a fantastic eco lead at the school that we've partnered with as a PE department to promote not only active travel but more specifically cycling. So there's a couple of national schemes that run, and they kind of do their own thing, but we've developed our own cycle scheme in school. So our year 5 children get a block of lessons within their PE now. Actually, no, it's not within their PE. Sorry, it's set as enrichment, so it's in addition to their PE, which we've called our Wheels Up program. So we teach them how to ride a bike, and if they're obviously competent riders, we'll advance their skills further. We teach them the basic bike skills. We also teach within that how to maintain their bike, so checking brakes, that kind of thing, checking gears, putting on a chain. We teach them about the safety of cycling, not only with the equipment they need, lights, reflectors, helmet, etc., but also then we do a little bit on the road with them as well, and how to be safe on the road. And we mock up roads and junctions and that kind of thing. And that came from a little bit of a need for us as a school, but also the national priority of getting children to be active on the way to school and reducing emissions and that kind of thing as well. So it was definitely a kill 2 birds with 1 stone approach. And yeah, that we trialed that last year. It was completely brand new, and we will kind of progress it further this year. We're giving the children more sessions, and we have a bank of bikes we use to give to children that maybe don't have their own bike at home. And yeah, we've seen as a result of that, the impact has been that ultimately more children are cycling to school, more children are safe when they are cycling, more children know how to be safe on the road. And again, it's something that I've never really kind of been into cycling, but actually it's something I'm really passionate about now. And it was quite shocking, even just kind of moving around the local area at the weekend, the amount of young people that are not safe on a bike, and that are cycling on and off the pavement and the road and don't have a helmet on. And that's ultimately because they haven't had that education. They haven't been taught that, at any point, I don't think. So, which is why we've decided to put that in as a school, definitely. And so far, like I say, it's having a really positive impact, and it's a really good initiative for us at the moment.
So do you think that's something that should be statutory in PE?
I think um, I think it's definitely something that should be considered. Absolutely.
Okay.
You've in the similar sense to swimming, you've got the same issue of access. Bikes are not
Hmm.
cheap, and then for us to be able to provide a bike to every child is impossible, obviously. Um, However, if you think, when we kind of started looking at this and sending out parent surveys, seeing who's got a bike, actually somewhere in the family, most children have got access to a bike, and obviously this is dependent on your area and your demographic, obviously, and I know that's not the same countrywide, but there are ways around it, and there's things we've done, like we took in donations of old bikes and fixed them up and got them worthy, and then we had a little bit of a budget from the eco committee to buy some more bikes. um, so there are ways around it, but it's something, again, that does have that financial barrier, I think, associated to it. But it's something that's really important. I think if I had the choice, it would be something that would absolutely be considered for certain. Yeah. And like you say, it's a skill. It's a life skill, isn't it? It's like, if you think about it, it's like learning to drive a car. Learning to ride a bike is I think equally important, and it's how a lot of young people and children would get around, rather than going on the bus or getting taxis or the train or whatever. If every child knew how to ride a bike and could do so safely, maybe it's something we'd see more of. And a lot of countries, sorry, do it really well. If you think of some of the European countries, that's kind of part of their culture, isn't it? Is particularly in certain cities. I think in some of the, like, Dutch cities and things, cycling around is part of the culture, and it's a way of life for certain people. Um, so yeah, it's something I think we can definitely progress with and do better with nationally.
Yeah, it's something. It's just interesting hearing you talk about it because um, I knew the Wheels Up program was sort of taking place. I wasn't sure if it was that was necessarily part of the curriculum or whether that was just
No, we sit it as enrichment at the moment. Yeah,
and I think that's really interesting because I do think it is a life skill, and it's one of those things that actually it's so valuable because, yeah, I don't know about the rest of the country, but right now where we live, there is a lot of cycling on pavements going on. And it is
yeah,
just, you take your life in your hands walking along the pavements because all the young people are cycling along the pavements.
yeah,
And it is, yeah, I don't know if that happens in the rest of the country or whether it's just where we are, but it does seem to be a bit of a thing because there are so many cars on the road that actually it's seen as more dangerous to go on the road than on the pavement. But then again, that impacts on the pedestrians and the pavements. So I think, yeah, skilling them up so they have that cycling proficiency is so key.
yeah. And also, I think, giving them the why. So, like, if I've had conversations,
Yes.
like, when we do our kind of walk to school weeks or whatever, and children say, "But why have I got to do that?" And that is where the PE curriculum comes in. A robust and well thought through PE curriculum and offer will give children that why. Well, I'm going to cycle to school because it's healthy, it's good for the environment. I get to cycle with my friends, which I don't always do. It gives me that independence. So children need to see the why behind it. Why is it important, and why are we trying to encourage it? Which I hope is what our PE curriculum kind of gives them, and offers them, gives them the chance to see. Definitely.
Mm. You're listening to Sunday Social with Toria Bono on Teachers Talk Radio. This show is brought to you in partnership with John Cat Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit johncatbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Parent Kind are a national charity representing parent views and voice and championing parental participation in education and school life. By fostering strong school parent partnerships, we can boost student attendance, improve behaviour, and enhance academic performance. When parents actively participate, students thrive. Join the movement that's reshaping education for the better. Visit parentkind.org to learn more about reaping the rewards of working in partnership with parents. Now, as we've been chatting, Matt, my mind has somewhat been blown because you know, I realized, I probably realized this before the conversation, but it's like how big PE is and how much actually it's not just about learning a new sport. It's so much bigger because children are learning key life skills. It's impacting, as you said, on their socialization, that whole team building thing. You've mentioned mental well-being, you've mentioned physical well-being. I mean, it's actually much, much bigger, I think, than I had consciously thought about. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's the foundation for physical activity for life, really, isn't it? And it, particularly at the primary level, obviously right through education as well, though, but particularly at the primary level, we are the first step in fostering that love. And you can get it so right, and it will change a child's future, or you can get it so wrong, and you'll put them off physical activity. They won't want to join in P lessons. They definitely won't want to take part in sport outside of school. And then this is not just then impacting them academically, but you're going to then have a huge impact on that particular child, potentially socially, but also maybe physically in terms of their physical health. And obviously, numerous amounts of research about the importance of staying physically healthy, and the impact that has on health, but then also mentally, mental well-being. And we're in a society now where children grow up online. They want to play video games. They want to sit in a dark room
Mm.
and sit behind an Xbox or a PlayStation. Um, and it's historically that was somewhat easier because we didn't have those things, and kind of the way you would play, if you like, was with your friends down the park, or you go and have a kickabout up the
Yeah.
um, local rectory or whatever, and play a game of football with your friends. And children don't want to do that anymore. So encouraging that early love for physical activity, is a real challenge, but it's also a huge responsibility, I think, that primary PE teachers have initially, and then secondary PE teachers also do. And I know from my schooling and from what I see now, certain children have a fantastic relationship with their PE teacher, and that PE teacher is someone that's so influential in their life, um, because they see how it shaped them, they see the impact it's had on them as an adult. I mean, there's a great clip, with Ian Wright and him meeting his old teacher,
Yes.
which is absolutely brilliant. And that is a real big inspiration. But if you kind of look at every single athlete, I think so many of them would say, "Oh, yeah, it was my PE teacher at secondary school. It's my PE teacher that kind of found me this sport, or found me this love for a game, that they've then kept with them." But it's not just those children. It's not your elite ones. It's every single child. And even if, for me as a primary PE teacher, if I can get a child just to love going for a walk, or going out for a run, or just going down having a casual kick around with a football with a couple of friends, that's great, because that's then going to stick with them for the rest of their life. The danger is that we kind of put them off, and we crush that opportunity they've got. They don't find a sport they enjoy. They see it as negative. Um, and then from our side, that will then carry into secondary school. That probably won't change at secondary school. Um, and then it will continue, and that'll be it. They'll be kind of dissatisfied with, or disengaged, sorry, from physical education, sport, PE for it, and then they tell their children that, and then we're kind of in this vicious circle. So yeah, it's huge. To answer your question in short, it's absolutely huge, and it's a huge responsibility.
It really is. I don't like the pressure on you.
It's
I'm
on
quite
you
glad
too.
that I'm not PE lead. I'm quite glad. I'm glad I'm not PE lead now, because I think it is. It's immense. I hadn't thought about the fact that it was. quite so big, because you're quite right. When I was growing up, I was always, when I wasn't, in primary, when I wasn't at school, I was out on my bike, I was out playing with my friends. I was always, always, always outdoors playing and doing something active. And nowadays, they're just not. They are sitting at home and so on. And I think, if children are not, if they don't have home lives in which they are active and encouraged to be outside, um, then it's tricky. It's very, very tricky for primary schools then to be encouraging it. I'm wondering, parental engagement. How do you get parents on board with all of this?
I think it's hard because you're also battling potentially a negative mindset from some parents. Um,
Okay.
I think they've got to see their child happy and enjoying PE, and them talking about that. And I think there is a very good argument that even primary PE should be specialist taught, and I think that's why we're very lucky to have a specialist teacher in primary, which is not always the case. Because that teacher, I think, is so crucial for that subject, and that's why secondary PE teachers are so good, because they've got obviously all that knowledge and understanding and passion. Ultimately, passion is so important. Um, Sorry, what was your question? I've gone a bit off
So,
strand.
no, no, you're fine. It was about parents, really.
Yeah,
How do you get parents engaged with it? But as you said, actually, if you've got that negative mindset to start with, that's tricky to overcome.
yeah, absolutely. And we've done little things, and I think parental engagement across the whole education sector is a challenge. And I think with a lot of senior leaders, that's something they're always trying to kind of be ahead with and consider how to improve their parental engagement. We've done things like I mentioned earlier, like the community club. So that's when
Mm,
parents bring their children in, and we have a rotation of different sports. They get to use our facilities for free, obviously, and they basically have a bit of free flow with their child about shooting in the basketball hoops, or we've got some reaction lights, playing with those, or maybe doing a bit of bowls even, or a dance if we put some music on. So we do structure a club, but we also give the children a bit of opportunity just to use our facilities with their parents. So that's one way. I think the real challenge with that is how do you not just get those parents that are engaged with PE and those children that are
yes.
engaged with sport, and you open it up to the wider demographic, and particularly those families and children that are completely disengaged. Um, so again, it goes back to finding the sport they love, and there's there's the misconception, I think, that sport has to be breaking out into a huge sweat, panting on the floor, lying on your back, unable to breathe, and it doesn't.
Mm,
Um, so we've worked with quite a few of our families that have got children that have SEN children with SEN, and we do kind of participation events. So we have a great game called New Age Curling, which you can just do sat down. It's like a dry form of curling rather than on ice. We have obviously bocce, which we play as well with some of those families and children. And again, it goes back to finding a game that the child loves, that they can maybe engage the parent in, and the parent is then ultimately going to see their child happy and enjoying themselves and being physically active, and all those great hormones are being released in the body, chemicals being released as well in the body, which makes the child happy. So I think it needs to start with what we do, and then getting parents engaged is a challenge. We obviously invite them to all our fixtures, so we always say, please come along, support your child, and that's not just competitive fixtures, but we have quite a few participation fixtures, which is open for any child, and we are really conscious about selecting always different children to come to those.
yeah.
And then obviously parents are invited, and that then gives us an opportunity to talk to them. And, oh, have you seen your child's really great at this? Have you thought about taking them out at the weekend? We've got a link with this club. Do you want me to pass on the details? That kind of thing. So I think it's little and often, it's regular. It's celebrating their child's successes. It's showing them that this has a huge impact on your child as well. And we also push it at things like sports days. I think sports day, it has huge potential to really influence these things I've talked about, to show off, if you like, just how important primary sport and physical education is. Absolutely. And we can really prove all those messages and theories that we've talked about this morning within something like a sports day. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Now, the final thing I just want to touch on before we go are links in the community, because you've mentioned the parental links and you've also mentioned then giving them links to others. So actually, have you worked to develop links within the community to build the PE within school?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in so many ways we've tried to get the community involved. So for example, if we go back to swimming, from hiring out a local independent school's pool and kind of justifying to them our kind of need within our school, and then working with them, which is a great link we've got. We have, for our clubs, we have local sports clubs come in and teach our children, and the children absolutely love that, because for them they're kind of seeing real athletes, and a lot of the time you get the actual players from the team. If it's a small enough team, I'm not talking Premier League football, but for example, our local basketball
Wouldn't
team.
that be great?
Yeah. For example, our local basketball team, one of the players comes in on his day off from
Yeah.
playing to teach the children a basketball session. It's like their idol to the children. They see a real basketball player. They're immediately then kind of fixated and engaged on what he's saying. And again, that's one of the ways we kind of link in the community. But it's smaller than that as well. So it's things like promoting when we do our active travel, or promoting when we do a cycle week, and we put that in the local paper. And we have people write in and say, "Oh, I've seen your school are doing this. It's really lovely to see." So then it's talked about in the community as well. And that then builds on that idea of legacy, doesn't it? And people talking about your school trying to make a difference within the local community for physical activity. One of the things we're looking at doing as well is taking a group of children to see. Maybe we've got the Brighton Premier League Stadium fairly close to us, but so taking the children over there to do maybe see a fixture, or see quite often you can get like the Lionesses play down there as well. So getting the opportunity to kind of take children and see sport,
Yes.
not just necessarily play it, but see sport within the local area. Again, it's another way to inspire, isn't it? It's another way to engage. And if they're watching sport, they're going to be more likely to play it in school at break time or lunchtime as well. So that's another way. And we're always thinking of new ways to kind of get involved and share ideas with other local primary schools. And those relationships start to build and develop as well. So we've got great links now with Sussex Cricket. And there's some amazing kind of initiatives, and there's little pots of money that funding and that people have got, and great government charities as well that do so much for the same reasons we've talked about, to try and inspire children and get them engaged. So it's about being aware and tapping into those pots of funding and talking to the right people to engage the community as well. Definitely.
Yeah. And listeners, if you are a P lead out there who's got new ways of doing things or great ways of doing things, do get in touch. Let us know exactly what it is you are doing so that we can share that out there with other people. Um, Sadly, that's brought us to the end of the show, and I just want to say thank you to Tom for the technicals, and thank you to everyone who has tuned into the Sunday Social and Teachers Talk Radio. If there's a topic that you would like us to discuss on here, then please get in touch with me or get in touch with Teachers Talk and let us know. I'll be back in another fortnight, so do join me then. But finally, Matt, thank you so much for coming on. I've got to say, it's been really interesting talking to you in this capacity, because I never get to talk to you about PE and so on, and it's fascinating. It really is. I'm going away with loads of notes written, which I always do when I chat to people on air, and it's like, oh wow, I feel a new level of inspiration about teaching PE. I really do.
Good. Thank you very
So
much. Thank you
thank.
for having me.
Oh, it's been wonderful. Been a great show. As always, I've learned so much, and I hope that you, Matt, have a great rest of your day. And thank you to you and everyone else.
Thank you. You too. Thanks everyone for listening.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.